I think the common thing that would bother a lot of Yankee fans is everything they were doing that was great at the start of the year, everything they were doing to win games at the start of the year has completely flipped on itself, and now they're losing games for the exact same reason. Right? They're not hitting the ball. They're not pitching well. They're not pitching deep into games. Their starters aren't dominating, and these are all things the Yankees were doing when they were winning games early on in the year.
You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Yankees, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. I'm Brian McKeon. Stacey Gotsulias has the day off today. She's traveling, so I'll be with you for Fanmail Friday. It'll be a solo venture today. We'll get into the Yankees and the Blue Jays, the awful start to game one and the worst four-game stretch hopefully they'll have all year. This episode of Locked On Yankees is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcast platform that you prefer. You subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like the video, hit the bell so you're notified when all of our videos go live. Again, today's a Fanmail Friday, and we'll get to your questions in a little bit. We got to start with Carlos Rodon, and it overall was a terrible performance for the Yankees. Their fourth loss in a row that includes 2 to the Mets and then this game in Toronto. And the common theme in all these games is the Yankees didn't compete in any of them, right? These weren't close games that they happened to lose. You can live with those 4-game losing streaks, but these ones, they were never in any of these games. The games got away from them extremely early. By the 5th inning, you knew the fate of the game. And it continues on that same theme where you're now not getting the starting pitching you were getting all season. And after the third hitter in the lineup, after you get through Volpe, Soto, and Judge, it really feels like they don't have a lineup. It feels like every guy is an automatic out. It feels like there's duds in the whole entire lineup. And this feels more serious than I think a lot of people are weary and willing to say it is, right? Because a lot of Yankee fans are going to sit there and tell you that it's not that serious. No, teams go on losing streaks. It depends on how they look. Right? Good teams go on losing streaks all the time, but they look bad. They look uncompetitive. They look not with it. I think the common thing that would bother a lot of Yankee fans is everything they were doing that was great at the start of the year, everything they were doing to win games at the start of the year has completely flipped on itself, and now they're losing games for the exact same reason. Right? They're not hitting the ball. They're not pitching well. They're not pitching deep into games. Their starters aren't dominating, and these are all things the Yankees were doing when they were winning games early on in the year. You have to learn how to deal with these things and how to get through these things. This just, to me, is starting to feel like it could become a prolonged thing because those hitters in their lineup, are they all going to start to turn it around? We had that quote from Boone earlier in the year where he said, you have so many avenues of this lineup where if Soto struggles, Judge can pick him up. If Judge struggles, Soto can pick him up. And you hope that all these guys at some point in time are going to be able to pick each other up. And when they're clicking all at the same time, it'll be great. But if they could pick each other up at different points, you could possibly see a team that can really stay competitive all year long. But they're not doing that now. No one in this team is doing that. And it feels like they don't have enough pieces across their entire roster where enough guys are going to be able to pick each other up. And I don't want to sit here and say that this, season is over, season is in trouble, but we've said it a lot on a lot of episodes, and it's the truth. You can lose World Series in this part of the season. You can't win them. You could certainly play yourself out of contention. Barrios went 7 innings, 2 hits, 2 earned, 8 Ks, was dominant all over them. The Yankee offense was non-existent throughout the entire game. Again, 2 hits for them in the first 7 innings. Really not acceptable. Let's get to Fanmail Friday because I feel like a lot of your questions may have changed after this game, but lo and behold, the Yankees have still been struggling, so we can get into a lot of that too. The first question, as usual, comes from our loyal listener, Betty. Friday's question, Boone's not going anywhere and neither is Torres. So how can we possibly clean up this mess? Why not bring up Peraza? He's not hitting, but can he play better defense than Gleyber right now? I don't think it has to do with that. I think they want to preserve Peraza's development, Betty. Like, here's the thing. If Gleyber's not playing well, you're not sending Gleyber down to redevelop his game and to figure things out, right? If Gleyber's not playing well, he's either going to sit at the major league level or just not play, right? But you can't bring Peraza up, have him struggle, and then keep sending him down, sending him back up. If you want to develop Peraza into a legitimate major league player, you have to let him develop his talents. You can't compromise Peraza's development to to help out Gleyber because he's struggling. So I don't think the Yankees want to do that. And there's also no guarantee Parad's going to come up here and hit either, right? Gleyber's not hitting well, but at least he has the major league experience at the plate. Let's go to David F. For Fanmail Friday, what do you think the package would be to have to get Mason Miller? Now, this has been a recurring question that we've gone over, and I'm sure these packages will develop more as the days go on, as the weeks go on, as we get closer to the trade deadline. I'll say this, David, no matter what it has in it, and it's going to be a bunch of top-tier prospects in the Yankee system, it's going to include Spencer Jones. And I think it has to. And I don't think if you're Oakland, I mean, who knows? Oakland can make dumb decisions, but I don't think if you're Oakland, you make that trade if it doesn't include Spencer Jones in it. And here's why. If you're Oakland and you want to rebuild, right, you're looking at acquiring as much talent as humanly possible. And they're in a bad spot of their franchise, and they need to kind of turn things around. But going into this move in a few years to Vegas, you don't mind having players that may take a year or two to develop, because your goal is to try and get good in 3, 4, 5 years when you move to Vegas. That's when you want to be good. So Spencer Jones, prospects like that are going to be, probably estimated time of arrival 3 or 4 years from now. And I think that's what the A's would look for. Plus, Mason Miller, the Yankees' problem here is they kind of let teams know what they need, right? If they're coming after Mason Miller, they need elite bullpen arms. There's going to be a high price to pay for that. He has a lot of years of control left. He's a young pitcher, low salary, throws really hard, and has a Tommy John surgery behind him. Those are all parts of an equation that usually lead to really, really, really aggressive packages having to be made. So I know a lot of Yankee fans are not keen on giving up on Spencer Jones, but sometimes you got to bite the bullet. And if you believe this team's going to have to win a World Series, you might have to do that. That's the package that you think you need to win. Casey Cotrue, I'm gonna pronounce. How did Brian get into the Yankees and the other sports teams he follows? Well, I grew up in a very sports-oriented family, right? I have an uncle who's an insanely passionate Yankee fan. I have, my father loved the Jets, loved the New York Rangers, so really got me involved in all that. I played baseball a lot as a child, and really my uncle was a huge, huge, huge Yankee fan, and I just think as a kid, it's really funny. I think you're exposed to it as a child to the point where you don't really have an option. Where like I wasn't exposed to the Mets as much, the Red Sox, or any other teams. That was the team that I followed, and I grew up in following it, and then it grew and grew and grew. And the more that you're around sports culture, the more that your family is like that, and then your friends are like it in school, and all you care about is sports. It just grows and grows and breeds this kind of person that can't, go a single day without watching a game. And, that's what I've become. I'm proud of it. I'm not going to apologize for it. But that's really how I grew up. I grew up just sports was everything, right? I've been to every Hall of Fame. I've got sports-related tattoos. It's my entire life. I spend my money on sports tickets. It's every night for me. I don't get to watch as much TV shows as I like because sports are on every night. So it affects my daily life. And if you're one of those, I think you guys can relate to what it's like. I feel like a lot of our listeners can relate to what it's like and what the kind of lifestyle is like. Al Santoro, who's a new insider. Remember, guys, that you can sign up for the Insiders Club and you get to text us. You get to, get inside information. We get information out to you guys a little quicker too. And you get your questions read first here on Fanmail Friday. So it really is worth it. Al Santoro, thank you for becoming a new listener. Do you think the recent poor starting pitching is being caused in part by the pressure of knowing the offense is non-existent once you get past the first 3 batters? Al, I got to be honest with you. That's a terrific point that you make. I think there's a lot more pressure. I wouldn't necessarily credit that towards Rodon struggling as much because it's been 3 starts in a row for Rodon, and they weren't necessarily playing this bad before Rodon came in. But take the other pitchers, right? When you have pressure to perform at every single inning, throughout the entire game, right? When you have pressure that every inning's got to be perfect, you can't give up more than 2 runs because you don't know if your offense is going to score. It's a trickle-down effect. It hurts your entire roster. It hurts your entire team. And pitchers pitch, you grip the ball a little tighter, you hold the ball, a little longer, and it just creates this ripple-down effect where you feel like you can't make mistakes. It's the exact opposite when we talk about pitchers and the confidence they have when a team scores a lot of runs behind them. Whereas you can pitch more aggressively and you can, dare I say, give up runs early, and it's not that big of a deal because you have the confidence your team's going to score later on in that game. Whereas when you look at a team like this, when you can't score, when it feels like duds after the third hitter in the lineup, it just is a trickle-down effect to the entire roster. It hurts the entire roster. And now you got pitchers that are gripping the ball a little tighter, that are pitching a little more stressed, and it just causes all of these things to happen. It's really not a good sign for this team. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on our videos, and hit the notifications so that you know when our videos go up. And if you want to be a part of the next Fanmail Friday, reply to the pinned comment on our videos from Monday through Thursday. And also you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. The link's in the description, and it's only for Fanmail Friday. You'll get texts from us. You can text us questions. We'll give you injury updates, roster moves, and more. There's a 14-day free trial, and it's a lot of fun. Coming up next, more of your questions answered on Fanmail Friday. This episode of Locked On Yankees is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. It's summer, and that means baseball, but summer also means travel, so why not mix the two? Do you think it's time you explored more of those cities around the country that you secretly want to learn more about? Yes, we're talking Yankees rival cities. Planning a trip to Fenway to see the Yankees play the Red Sox? Booking.com makes it a breeze, and it's not just about hotels. You can choose a variety of accommodations like bed and breakfast right outside of Boston, vacation rentals, resorts, and more, all with the convenience of Booking.com. On Booking.com, you can find the perfect stay even in your baseball team's rival city. And for Yankee fans, that means more than just Boston. It's Baltimore. It's Tampa too. You can book hotels and overlook stadiums or book family-friendly resorts. Booking.com has so many choices around the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. And Locked On Yankees is also brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, and I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down and we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to anymore, FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all of its customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. How about the Copa of America, right? Root for your team, root for your heritage. You can bet on the Euros, the Copa America. You can bet on Messi to score, all the fun bets that are out there. Bet on Team USA that's supposed to make a run in this Copa America. It should be a lot of fun. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On Yankees. Make sure you watch Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories of the day. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you can catch the Hometown Yankees broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Yankees. Getting to more of your Fanmail Friday questions. These ones come from more of the Twitter direction. Let's go to at Martin Ober 249. Hi, Brian. With Jose Trevino struggling defensively and tailing off at the plate, do you think the Yankees will give Ben Rice some time behind the plate? I prefer Rice over Austin Wells because Wells is barely hitting over the Mendoza line. I hear what you're saying. I've looked into both and I wonder on both, right? So Rice isn't hitting as well as I want him to, right? And the problem with Austin Wells is he makes solid contact, right? Like he looks like he belongs in the major leagues. Rice has good at bats. They always claim that he sees the ball really well, and I do get that sense out of him, but he doesn't look to me ready for the major leagues. Whereas Austin Wells makes solid contact. He's a really good catcher. I like what he gives the team. I just don't know if he's necessarily at that level. He's not hitting for average right now. He's not hitting for power. He may have been called up a little prematurely towards the end of the year last year. Hitting over the Mendoza line, I think what the Yankees are going to end up doing at this deadline is not just acquiring a new catcher. They're going to look for a corner infielder too. I think the book is kind of out on Trevino at this point, and it's kind of sad because he did win a Platinum Glove a few years ago, but you're at a point now where teams know they can run on him. Teams know they can run on the Yankees, and it's become a part of their game plans. You saw it with Boston. You saw it with the Mets. You've seen it. You're going to see it all year now at this point. Any game that Trevino plays in, they're going to run, especially with pitchers like Stroman who, take their time getting to the mound on pitches. That's a huge problem for them. They can't afford to have teams get the running game going, especially if they get into the postseason and teams decide to do that. I can be really honest with you. That's what teams are going to look to do in the postseason. They're going to look to cause chaos in the base paths. And if you let that happen, it's going to be really hard when you get down to big leads like that and you're seeing better pitching to score a lot of runs in the postseason games. And if they're going to be able to run the bases like that, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So I think the Yankees are going to acquire and catch at the deadline. And hopefully it's a guy that gives you a little more pop at the bat. Generally, catchers, you can afford to see worse hitting performances at if their fielding is good. When both struggle, that's when you really start to get aggravated with a catcher. Robbie Garnes 7732 says, my question has to do with how catchers are evaluated. Clearly, Trevino's been exposed for his inability to throw anyone out trying to steal bases. It's never been this bad before, but let's face it. He has never been known for having a cannon behind the dish. Although, as Brian points out, ironically, he's been pressed into service as a pitcher during a couple of clunkers by our regular staff. But all kidding aside, this guy was a Platinum Glove winner just 2 years ago, which brings me to my question. How are catchers being evaluated to decide the Gold Platinum Glove winners? And is it possible that certain attributes like framing and blocking are overvalued while the ability to throw runners out is undervalued? I'd like to hear your thoughts, and thanks again for keeping up the stellar work. Your pal, Robbie. Robbie, I appreciate the question. When it comes to Gold Glove, Platinum Glove members, they're evaluated the exact same way the other players are evaluated, right? Baseball media members vote on it, and they vote on what they've seen the best, and usually it goes by statistics. Like in advanced analytic fielding statistics. When it comes to framing, I think it's been more emphasized over the last 5-10 years than it ever was in the past. Now, you can go back and watch old games and consider frame rates for other guys, but I don't think it was as strong of a thing as it is right now. And I know Trevino is known to be one of the better framers in all of baseball, but his fielding play has, gone downhill, and it wasn't this bad the last few years when they've had him, right? You were not seeing him get run on like this. This was not a theme with the Yankees the last few years. It's become a theme now, and once you get exposed to something like this and you can't seem to stop it, that's when you get this trickle-down effect, and it doesn't end well because you can't keep playing a guy that this happens to. It's not justifiable. It's not sustainable, right? You're not going to be able to sustain this kind of play, and teams are going to take advantage of you. And the Mets have done it, right? The Red Sox did it. Alex Cora really pointed out the most. And I don't think they're going to change when it comes to attributes of framing, of blocking, and stuff like that. I do agree with you. I think they're slightly overvalued, but that's where we are now in the analytical baseball world, right? They evaluate those kind of things as the most important, and it's really become a problem for this team. And if the Yankees don't fix this, and they're going to have to at the deadline, it's going to become a problem all year, because if you don't think any team's going to do this to them, you're out of your mind. Let's go to Morris at Morris83. My biggest question with the Yankees the last few years is whether or not they have a competitive fire. There seems to be a tendency to mail it in on nights where things aren't going the Yanks' way. This is a huge problem if the goal is to win the World Series. In the playoffs, you don't have the luxury of mailing it in. You have to grind through adversity every night for 9+ innings. The competitive spirit necessary to win in those situations is something that must be tried and tempered during the regular season. But some nights, I just don't see the effort or desire to compete through adversity. Some nights, they seem ready to just move on to the next game or series. Do you agree with this assessment? And if so, do players on the roster, do you think, show up every day with the competitive desire to defeat the opponent? Because they're guys the Yankees need to build around, and if the Judge era is going to produce a World Series title. I think this is a terrific point, Morris. And I think it all stems down from the manager. I do. I've openly not been an Aaron Boone fan, honestly, but you've seen it in the lineups that he's put out there. Now, you haven't seen it as much this year, but you've seen it in years past where he's, obsessed over rest days, obsessed over getting these guys some time off. I want to get him a day here, a day here. Or you see when they're up 2-0 in a 3-game series, he doesn't go for the third win. He punts on the third game. He puts out a lineup that is equivalent to a AAA lineup. They lose the game by 3 runs, and the team moves on and goes on to the next series. As soon as they get down in games, you see it happening. Specific players, Gleyber Torres gets that mantra all the time. I'm not going to sit here and say that Gleyber Torres is a lazy player or a bad player. No, I simply don't believe that. But I think you see it with the team, though. I think you see this lack of there is no belief right now that when they get down a few runs, they're going to come back. And that stems down from the manager. It does. I thought it was the wrong move to extend him. I thought it was bad timing, and I thought it was good timing to move on. And instead, they extended him. They thought they can get more out of him. They thought he was the perfect player's manager. He is a player's manager, but I think to a fault. I think a little too much. I said this yesterday on the show. Joe Torre was a player's manager, but he still let to call guys out when they weren't performing well and light a fire under their butt. But Boone doesn't do that. Boone doesn't call anybody out. The most energetic moment that we saw in his entire managerial career is when he slammed the desk that one time, and that produced much? Not really. You're getting through you want to get through this stretch, right? And you can't sit here and think that, they're terrible. What's going to happen? But this is now 4 games in a row where they're not scoring, and B, they're out of a game really early. That can't happen. It really can't. Coming up next, we'll go over game 2. We'll look forward to game 2 of the series. That'll do it for Fanmail Friday. We'll look towards game 2, 3, and 4, actually, because we're not going to be on the weekend of the Blue Jays series. We'll see if the Yankees can really salvage anything, because they're really going to be tested going forward, especially in this game, the series going forward. And we've went over the schedule. It's not too Yankee friendly. So you got to start getting on a little bit of a roll and starting to get some wins here. If you're looking for tickets just about anything, check out the app Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, and comedy shows near you. Baseball isn't in New York this weekend, but Game Time, when it is, has all the deals on tickets right up to moments before the event starts, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. So if you decide to go to Yankee Stadium at 7:15 for a 7:05 start, you can still find tickets. You can also find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for hockey, basketball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app today and get $20 off your first purchase with code all caps locked on MLB. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV app and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories today with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Let's go over the rest of the Blue Jays series, because I do think it's a little pivotal for the Yankees, right? Not that it's necessarily a huge deal, not that your season's necessarily going to end if you don't beat Toronto, but you don't want to lose these games, right? What if you get swept and now it turns into a 5, a 6, a 7-game losing streak? Great teams that win championships don't tend to go on multiple game losing streaks like this throughout a season. So you're really going to start to be careful. We went over game 1. Rodon came in with a 9-4 record, but a 3.86 ERA. Well, Rodon's ERA is now over 4 after that game 1 of that series. That's a huge talking point too, because he came in and his ERA before these 3 starts was in the 2s. And now you're seeing a guy with an ERA in the 4s. That's going to take a lot of time to get down. And, he has just not been the same pitcher over the last 3 starts. You got to find an area here for him to be able to turn it around. Game 2 will be later on today. It'll be another 7 o'clock start. Marcus Stroman, 7-3 with a 3.15, makes his return to Toronto. Pitched really well, especially against former teams. I do like Stroman in this spot. I think he's going to have a lot of confidence going out there, trying to stop the Yankees' losing streak. He's going to go up against Yusei Kikuchi, who's 4-7 with a 4 ERA. We've gone over this before with Stacy. This feels like one of those pitching matchups with the 4 ERA with the Yankees are going to struggle. You hope not. But Marcus Stroman, I think, will come out there with a little bit of a vengeance, a little bit of a spark. And usually that's a good sign for the Yankees, especially with Stroman, a guy that pitches with a lot of emotion behind him. Game 3 is going to be Cortez. He's got a 4-6 with a 3.40 ERA. He'll go up against Chris Bassett, the former Met, 6-6 with a 3.45 ERA. Chris Bassett's had a nice year. And Cortez, away from Yankee Stadium, for whatever reason, really struggles. In the Bronx, awesome pitcher. Out of the Bronx, has a little more trouble. So we'll see if he'll be able to give them a good start. And then game 4, Garrett Cole, 0-1 at 9 ERA. Not much to say there. I mean, it's been 2 starts. He'll go up against Gausman with a 2.66 with a 4.26. Listen, you're getting Stroman and you're getting Cole. And I would have said the same thing about Rodon too. Guys that want to consider themselves aces in your rotation. These are guys that, if they're going to consider themselves that, have to go out, have to dominate, and have to end losing streaks. That's why you have aces in your rotation, right? because when your team gets on losing streaks, they're supposed to end those streaks. And that's the job of Cole right now. That's the job of Stroman tomorrow night, later on tonight. These are starts those guys have to put in. You think Cole's going to get you a better start. Hopefully he didn't come back too soon. His stuff looks fine. He just, he started the year off late, didn't get a full spring training. You just want to see him catch a rhythm and go forward with it that way. This is a series, like I said before, you don't want to get too far behind on losing games. And we've made this point before on a bunch of shows, and it really is the truth. You can certainly lose your playoff position. You could certainly lose World Series. They've gotten lucky that Baltimore really hasn't caught up on them much. It hasn't really made much ground on them. And that's only because Baltimore's not winning games. The Yankees have not done their part, have not kept themselves in their lead. It's just Baltimore's not winning baseball games, and it's fortunately helping them out. They won today. They beat Texas. I'm going to check the standings right now as I'm on with you guys. They now have the lead in the division. So let that sink in. Because the Yankees, even through that Baltimore series, through both Baltimore series, they had lost. They still were so far above Baltimore that they had a lead in the division. And now Baltimore is tied technically with the tiebreaker currently scenario. They're above the Yankees. That's a problem. Because if you don't start to turn this thing around and figure things out, the only injury the Yankees have right now is that Stanton injury. Yeah, the Rizzo one, but how good was Rizzo playing anyway? Right? And you have that Stanton injury, and it seems that the team has fallen apart since then. Soto wasn't out as long as you nearly thought when he first got hurt. Judge wasn't out as long as you thought. They haven't had many injuries. It feels like Verdugo hasn't hit since the Red Sox series. It feels like they've got no production out of the catcher position, no production at a second base, barely any production at a first base, none at a third base. You can't have that many positions where at the plate the guy is a dud. You need more production around this lineup. One more time, you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. There's a link in the description under the YouTube videos and a 14-day free trial. You get texts from us, and you can text us questions at any time of the day. Or you can leave questions under the pinned comment also below in our YouTube videos to get your questions answered for Fanmail Friday. If you join the Insiders Club, you get top priority, but we'll still answer your questions on YouTube if we're able to get around to it. Stacey will be back next week, and you can remember that you can catch every pitch of the Yankees hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Yankees. That's going to do it for me on this edition of Locked On Yankees. I'm Brian McKeon. We'll see you guys next week.